It's the
Well, hello.
Hey, y'all.
Hello,
We,
everybody. Squirrel,
yes, I'm
did you
trying
have a
to.
good day? Did you have a good day?
I worked hard again today, as always,
Are
but
are are
I
are you
slept.
ready? Are you ready to do
Yeah, I slept
a
in for this one. I think I was so excited. I was up at like 4:30, and I was like, "Ugh." So I got in the bathtub, sat for about 4 hours, and then finally laid down and took a nap. So, yeah, I'm ready to roll.
I, I bet Mark Newbill was up till 3 or 4 in the morning putting that little commercial thing together for us.
I haven't even talked to him today, but yeah, he said it'd take him a little while to do it. That was pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
that was that was awesome. How many people do a commercial for an upcoming show and do it for their friends, for other people?
And asked us about doing it. That's the thing. He just volunteered, wanted to do it for us.
That was so
See,
cool.
Mark's nice.
Well,
You could take a lesson from him. Just
shut
saying.
up. If everybody knew how you really were, they wouldn't think what they think about me.
Everybody knows how I am. That's why they like me better. We done had
They
this
don't they don't
discussion.
they don't like you better. They just say that publicly. Secretly, they like me better.
Okay, keep telling yourself that. I'll let you think it. But I'm
Okay.
excited, y'all, about tonight. This is going to be a good one.
So Misty and I have been talking for a while about the Dogman thing, and everybody knows I'm not a big fan of the Dogman thing, mostly because, I don't want to think about those dang things whenever I'm out in the woods and whatnot. But like I've said before, after talking to, several credible people in the past few years, I really, I just, I think they're probably real. I don't have any firsthand experience about it, but I've got some people on tonight that y'all will recognize that probably do have firsthand experience about it, or at least know way more about it than me, Mr. Kumbo Baker, Mr. Vic Cundiff,
Hey,
and
y'all.
my buddy Larry Porch, just to keep me in line because I'm liable to lose it on this subject.
Well, I'll say up front that I'm no expert on Dogman for sure. I barely know
I'm
anything
no
about
ex-
Bigfoot.
I'm no expert on anything. I remodel people's homes for a living, and I'm like, I don't know. I hope that's right.
I don't know if I
Kumbo,
want to be an expert on Dogman.
Vic,
I'm going
That's
to
the
check
thing.
everybody's mics right quick just to be sure.
Vic Cundiff, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm great. Thank you for agreeing to do this. I mean, at least with your amount of experience on the subject, you can like weigh in and maybe answer some questions. Maybe you have like some inside scoop on stuff you've heard from other people and everything that would come into play or something.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be glad to. I've got a lot of inside scoop. Some of it I can't share, of course, but if I can
Yeah.
put it out there, I will. And if I can answer any questions, I will. But yeah, like Tim said, there are no experts in this.
Well, I don't think there's no experts in this whole paranormal subject as far as I know. I mean, some credible people definitely, but I don't think any experts. So let's get it started now. Let, let me start by saying a couple of us. I mean, I know that myself and Larry and Misty and Mark Newbill and quite a few other people I know. Eric Tipton, Kane Michael. We've all gone in the woods, like further back in there, and camped out, like in the middle of nowhere, where we were way away from vehicles and everything, trying to have interaction with boogers in particular. Uh, and a couple times we've done some dumb stuff, like try to bait them in or call them from camp and all that kind of stuff. But the booger thing has never really bothered me. I mean, I've gotten a little nervous a couple times when I thought something was creeping up close to my tent or my tarp or whatnot, but I wasn't worried about that. Something about the visual image of like an upright canid type creature that we don't know about that would be equated to like an 8 foot or 9 foot tall werewolf damn thing. I mean, for some reason, that bothers me. I don't want to be in the woods with that. I lose sleep over that whenever I'm camping in the middle of the woods. But I mean, if you think that they're real, because I know boogers are real, but if you think that Dogman's real, doesn't it give you kind of a different mindset perspective whenever we're out there boogering? I mean, don't you think like, hey, what if I see one of those things? Somebody.
Understand that most of the fear that comes from these guys being in the woods is due to a lack of understanding. I mean, if you look at my avatar here in the picture, the idea of running into that guy in the woods, maybe a full-grown male, 11 feet tall, 12 feet tall, that's going to really shake you up. But over the years I've been doing this, I spoke with my first eyewitness in 2007, and since then I've literally spoken with thousands upon thousands of Dogman eyewitnesses. And to date, the total number of credible eyewitnesses who've ever told me about being harmed, intentionally harmed by the Dogman or Dogmen that they ran into is a whopping 6 or 7. So think about that. 6 or 7 attacks out of thousands upon thousands of Dogman eyewitnesses I've spoken with over the years. Now that right there tells you that if you have an encounter with the Dogman, let's keep this in perspective. If you have an encounter with the Dogman, I know it's a profound statement, but it's an accurate one, and I'll explain here in a second. If you spoke with thousands upon thousands of people who have interacted with horses, okay, now if you ask that thousands upon thousands of people in that group, how many of you have been intentionally harmed by a horse or horses you've interacted with? You know full well that the number would be in the hundreds of those people. If you asked thousands upon thousands who've interacted with horses directly, hundreds would say, yeah, I was kicked, I was bitten, I was stomped on turnout. One ran into me on purpose. Well, if you swap horses out for camels or pigs or goats, whatever, you pick the animal, you name it, that number is still going to be in the hundreds if you poll thousands upon thousands of them. Now, the fact that I've spoken with thousands upon thousands of Dogman eyewitnesses, and that number is 6 or 7, back to my point. That right there tells you that as hard as it is to wrap your mind around, when you look at the big picture, Dogmen actually show a ridiculous amount of restraint whenever they either force an encounter with a person to happen or someone just stumbles into them. So the numbers say that technically you're safer to have an encounter with a Dogman than with a horse or a dog or a pig or a camel. I'm not saying that Dogmen are safe to be around. That's a canard that floats around my shows all the time where people say, well, yeah, Vic thinks these guys are safe to be around. You can sing Kumbaya with them and all that. I don't say that, and I know better. Any critter, as all of you guys are going to know, any critter with teeth and or claws, if you push the wrong buttons, if you're talking about horses, cattle, sheep, you name it, you push wrong buttons, they just might attack. And even if you don't push wrong buttons, this Dogman that you run into over here might have had a bad day. It might have suffered an injury. You don't know what it's been through. It just might attack you. But this whole idea that these guys are attack on sight monstrous beings, the numbers just show that's not the case.
I'll agree with that.
I think a lot of our angst about Dogman comes from Hollywood. All the werewolf movies we've seen, The Howling and all that, because that's exactly what they depict in the movies. So I think that's why we fear it so much.
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely. It's that whole lack of understanding. That's what the problem is. When I talk with eyewitnesses, in a lot of cases, they basically talk themselves out of a lot of the fear they're feeling because they listen to themselves explain what happened. Vic, there was a 10-footer, an 11-footer that was blacker than black. He was reaching over me and reaching out for me. I was well within grabbing distance. And he had bottom canines. I don't know how long the upper canines were, but he had bottom canines that were 3-4 inches long. And he had slobber gobulets running out between his lower canines. That was these gobulets were hitting the dirt right in front of my toes. And I can still hear the sound of it pitter pattering in the dirt. And he's looming over me. And then he's reaching out for me. Then he stands up. And then he's reaching out for me, looming down over me, and then standing back up. Well, if he really wanted you, he would have just grabbed you. But when they explain to me what happened to them, that kind of helps them put the pieces together in a lot of cases. So yeah, like Tim said, I mean, I've heard Tim even mention this on shows before. These guys, they've got that rep as being kill you on sight monsters. Well, they prove time after time that's not the case. Yeah, there have been some attacks, but yeah, they definitely are few and far between.
Well, I had one up in LBL come into the camp, and it intended on getting my dog. And I was between it and the dog, and it got within 3.5 to 4 feet of me. And a guy in the camp snapped his camera, and the flash went off, and it took off. It could have grabbed me easy, or it could have reached around me and grabbed the dog. But I mean, I know in my heart of hearts that it was coming in to get my dog. But like I said, a camera flash scared it away, and it ran off. And I know I've seen pictures that people took and didn't realize. They knew something was out there, but they didn't know what. And they, snapped several pictures, and later when they got to looking at them, there's a Dogman. And the thing was standing there looking at him, had his nose crinkled up, his ears laid back, baring its teeth, but it didn't attack him. I mean, I've heard quite a few reports like that.
What was the story about? Was it Dallas Gilbert and Wayne that incidentally snapped a picture of one that was close to them? What was that story? How close were they?
Right. That was the first actual Dogman photograph that I knew was genuine that I ever saw. And they were up in a creek walking. Well, no, I'm wrong. They were not in Salt Fork. They were in a part of the Shawnee National Park or State Forest there in Ohio. And they were easing along through the woods there, and they got to a point where they said both of them felt a bunch of dread and everything. Their skin was crawling, their hair was standing up, they were covered with chili bumps. And Dallas says, he said, I couldn't pick up another foot to put it in front of the other one. And I just felt like if I went any further that I was going to be in mortal danger. And he said, so he just picked his camera up, and this is back in the film camera days. This is back in the late 90s. And he shot 5 shots, just panned it around, started and shot 5 shots. And he sent the negatives to my friend Jim Hart, a.k.a. Bubba Gump. And Jim used to do a lot of photographic analysis. And he asked Jim to look in the my dog was just sitting beside me, paramedic, on the sofa. Anyway, he said he felt like that it was in frame number 4. Well, Jim didn't find anything in frame number 4. That's where he started off looking, but he got to looking in frame number 2, And man, it was very, very clear. There was one standing there in the shadows under a tree looking right at Dallas. I mean, he was looking right into the camera. And like I said, he had his nose wrinkled up in a snarl. You could see his upper and lower canines. His ears were pinned back. It was such a clear photograph that you could see the pupils of his eyes. And I will tell you this, that if you could look at that photograph and look it in the eyes and your blood didn't run cold, then there was something wrong with you. You didn't have a soul. And that picture, we put it in a lot of places. There were lots of people had copies of it. I had it on a couple of different computers on several thumb drives. Mike McLean had it posted on several places on his the ABRF website. And it was around for a number of years. And then one day I went in on my computer, one of my computers looking for it. I was going to post it, show it to somebody, and couldn't find it. And I got on my other computer and couldn't find it. I started going through my thumb drives, couldn't find it. I called Bubba, and he couldn't find it. Went on the ABRF website, the forum. It was gone. And so we started looking for it. Several of us did. And those photographs just disappeared. Everybody that had a copy of that we were ever able to find, the photographs just disappeared. And but it was something else. I showed it to quite a few people, and everybody that saw it got the shivers, and it was an excellent quality picture of something that appeared really, really bad. And at the time, that definitely reinforced my present feeling was that they were all next thing to Satan, but when I got to thinking about it, I said, well, if that thing really wanted Dallas and Keith dead, they'd have been dead. And then here, a couple of 3 years later, I had my encounter with them up there to LBL, and I'm like, wow, I was amazed to come through that in one piece. But
now the encounter at LBL's when you first started really thinking Dogman was real, or was it before then?
Well, in 1984, I had figured out they were real. The very first, and anybody's heard me talk, the very first official Bigfoot report that I ever took was in 1978, and I went and interviewed a family that lived about 5 miles east of me, and I had it in my mind it was a Bigfoot encounter. They gave me a perfect description of a Dogman, but I didn't believe it because I'd never heard of a Dogman at that point. And I wrote it up as a Bigfoot sighting. Less than a mile away through the woods, there was a hunting club, and the cook had run into them a couple of times rummaging through the garbage drums after they had a get together, a feed. And I'm not talking about Bigfoot, I'm talking about Dogmen. He again described it to me correctly, and even how the legs bent and how the hock was up off the ground and all that, and the kind of tracks that they left. And this is 1978. I wrote it up as a Bigfoot sighting. It wasn't until 1984 down on Highway 29 in between Troy, Alabama, and out northeast of Troy, headed towards Union Springs, Alabama. I had 2 ladies that worked for me that had an encounter on the way to work. And when I finally got them to talk to me about what in the world had them so upset, and they described this gigantic werewolf-looking thing to me, I got them to agree to go after work and show me where this happened. And I found its tracks. I also saw where it had crossed the road and gone up a 13-foot, almost vertical embankment in 2 steps. In other words, when it kicked off the ground, the first paw print was about 6.5 feet up, and the next one was just below the rim of the embankment, and the one after that was over the edge and right at the edge of the woods. And like I said, I got to see 2 pretty clear tracks. Well, really 3 pretty clear tracks and 1 fair one. And we figured out that the thing was where it had come out up on the highway. I was able to staple a little 10-inch paper plate to a stick of bamboo and hold it up, and each one of them individually. And I got them to stop where its head was, and we figured out it was about 9 feet tall. And that's when I realized that the people who I'd talked to, 7 years prior to this, 6 or 7 years prior to this, what they were talking about. And that's when I also realized that a fellow that worked on our farm had told me that, we all knew about the boogers that lived out there, but one night he said, he was saying that there was something else out there. In fact, his exact words were, there's things in these woods that only God Almighty himself knows what they are.
Yeah.
But and it was 1984 when, spring of 84 is when I realized that dogmen existed.
Vic, with you having done the Dogman encounters for such a long time and everything, now you were into cryptids, before just focusing in on Dogman. What was the stuff that convinced you? What made you convinced that they were real?
Well, back around the time when I started really getting hot and heavy into the Dogman thing, actually right before that, I was a co-host on a Bigfoot-specific podcast called Campfire Shadows with the now deceased Shane McMahon. And back then, Tim and Bear, they used to be regulars on that show. And there was an episode where they came on and they had just been on an outing and they talked about seeing or speaking with someone. I can't remember how it played out, but they came on the show and talked about either seeing or speaking with an eyewitness who saw what they called a dog-faced booger. And when I heard them say dog-faced booger, I thought, what in the world is that? So after the show, I don't know if I asked him about this or Bear, but yeah, when they told me what it was basically a dogman. And I thought, wow, a dogman, huh? So I looked into it, and the more I looked into it, the more I thought to myself, well, if you have an encounter with one of these guys, who do you go and speak with about it? Of course, it was years later after that I really got into it, but I did speak with an eyewitness back then in 2007 or 2008 who actually lived right there by the LBL, and he had a really bad encounter. It wasn't, when you look at the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that bad of an encounter, but it was really frightening. But that's how this all got started.
Let me ask you this, Vic. You said to start off with that after, 1,000 plus interviews, you've only had 6 or 7, a handful of people that have claimed to be injured. And now, obviously, I could go out there and just thinking out loud could be like, well, of course, if they killed someone, the person wouldn't be alive to, tell their story or anything. But the 6 or 7 people that did admit to being injured by them, was there any type of common denominator like that would explain maybe what they did to get the things riled up to the point where they did get attacked by them?
Well, besides wearing a North Face hat, no.
I'll change the hat before I go out next time.
No, there weren't any similarities. It was just seemingly dumb luck. They didn't seemingly do anything. And when I've made that comment before, you've got people who will say, of course, they did something to trigger it. But of course, when people tell you what they did, they're not going to tell you everything that happened. They're not going to tell you everything they did. But no, nothing that they told me points towards them doing anything to trigger the attacks. It just seemed like the attacks just happened. And if they wanted to be dispatched, if the Dogmen wanted to dispatch them, then they wouldn't have been around. And then, of course, people will point to that idea that, okay, well, the people who are killed by these guys, they can't come forward and talk about their experiences. Well, that's true, they can't. But if these guys were wired to be mindless killing monstrous machines, then you wouldn't have all these people contacting me and telling me about standing right there, right in front of a Dogman that's towering over them and then allowed to go. So
that's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, if they were kill you on sight machines, that just would not happen. And it hasn't been just a little over 1,000. There's been thousands upon thousands of eyewitnesses I've spoken with over the years. Understand the volume. There's this idea that Dogman encounters are really once in a blue moon type occurrences. Well, for a long time now, I don't bat an eye if I have 3, 4 brand new Dogman eyewitnesses contacting me in one day who I've never heard from before in my life to tell me about their Dogman encounter. And some days I'll have as many as 7 or 8 brand new Dogman eyewitnesses I've never heard from before, ever before, reach out and contact me. Now, there aren't all that many days like that, but there have been days like that where you will have tons of them reach out and contact me about their experiences. So these things, these occurrences are not once in a blue moon type occurrences. They happen a lot more often than most people are ever going to realize.
So a lot of people, I see comment stuff like stuff along the lines of the Dogman thing is a new thing in the past few years, and like it was like a spark that caught, and now it's a big fire because you didn't hear a whole lot about it, 30, 40 years ago. And I'm kind of wondering if even in the cryptid community where Bigfoot has become kind of an acceptable topic with all the TV shows and everything, I think it's probably given a lot of people the understanding that, hey, it's more acceptable to talk about it now than it was a while ago. I wonder if a lot of people that did have Dogman experiences way back in the day thought to themselves that was even too far out for like the cryptid community, but now they're starting to be recognized and they're coming forward. What do you think?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, you hit it on the head. Yeah, think about what Patterson and Gimlin went through back when they came back in with the film of Patty. Think about what they went through. Well, with Dogmen are going to be, these guys are even harder to believe in their existence.
Right.
So, yeah, it's only natural that if you have a Sasquatch sighting, you're going to be reluctant to come forward and put it out there. But imagine for someone who doesn't deal with the cryptid community, doesn't watch shows on cryptids, to them, Sasquatch is a huge stretch. But to have an encounter with something that looks like a werewolf, yeah, imagine. They're not going to want to come back and tell their families or friends or put it out there that, guess what? I saw something that looked like a werewolf. So, yeah, you hit it right on the head.
I know. Like I said, I have an immediate family member that used to tease me about Bigfoot and, talking about him and that I believed in him. And, this guy had he was had a very technical profession. And then one evening he'd been out mowing the grass, after dark, and it was just about black pitch dark, and he gets off the mower and he turns around and there's one standing there right beside the garage looking at him. I'm talking about a Bigfoot. And it was the way he described it, I knew it was the alpha that lives in that area. And I mean, he described it perfectly. And he being an engineer, he, got some references that we were, he could go back and measure later and figured out the dude was about 10 feet tall. Well, that was a lot for him to get his head around. And then it wasn't very long after that. And he'd never even heard us. I don't know if he'd ever heard us even talking about Dogman or anything, but he was coming home from work and he was on a 4-lane U.S. highway going along, and it was after dark, and looked up, and a Dogman came airborne out of the woods, hit on the shoulder of the road. The next time it hit was in the median. The next time was on the north shoulder of the road, and it was airborne, went into the woods on the other side. This cleared right away is, I can't remember how many feet wide it is, but it was a ridiculous distance that it covered in 3 bounds. And what he just couldn't get over was the fact that it was built like a big, huge German Shepherd looking. He said the head looked like a big, huge German Shepherd head, and and big, big, long, muscular body. And then I told him what it was, and he was he's still sort of amazed at it today. But that sort of changed his outlook on the world, seeing that thing. First he had the encounter with the Bigfoot, then some little while, not very long afterwards, he sees a Dogman. And I've never had a Dogman encounter like that before, that I saw one, that well for that long. And he had his high beams on it. It ran right through his headlights. And, and he was in a curve, so he saw it from, he saw the whole thing as it came out of the woods and crossed the highway right away. But Vic, something I wanted to ask you: when you're interviewing people, do you ever ask them about any cologne or perfume that they had on, if they did or didn't? You ever thought about that?
No, I've never asked them about that, but that's a trigger. Like that one conversation we had a few years ago, that is a trigger to wear strong cologne or strong perfume.
Right. And I see Dale Boswell on there. Hi, Dale. And
hey, Dale.
And
what about a heavy BO like Spencer being out in the woods for 5 days?
I don't know about that. I don't know. but
and the heavy cologne thing comes into play with something we're going to talk about here in a minute. The LBL thing. But hey, Vic, just out of curiosity, with all the people that you've talked to on the subject, this has become a new thing that I am curious about. How many of them, if any, have mentioned the whole loud metallic sound right around the time of the encounter? Like, has anybody talked about hearing something loud and metallic? Like, to just come right out and say it, like heavy metal doors opening from underground to let one of these things out. Have you ever heard anything like that?
Oh, man.
I've heard about that phenomenon, but no one's ever told me about witnessing that. They have mentioned hearing a sound like not really air brakes releasing on a truck, but a loud, forceful hiss, air hissing type sound. And then, of course, the knuckle cracking sound, where it sounds like their joints are popping and cracking like giant knuckles when they're standing up. But no sounds like what you just asked about. No.
Regular Bigfoot will hiss at you if you get too close to them. I've been hissed at a few times, and it's quite unnerving. And I sort of knew that, that's sort of a last warning. I was too close and I needed to back off.
Does anybody describe specific smells with Dogman? I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about smells with boogers, but does anybody describe a specific scent that they pick up with a Dogman encounter?
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, I've heard about people reporting to me that they smelled what smelled like a dog that had never been washed, wet, stinky dog smell, rotting flesh, the smell of feces and urine and all those things. Yeah, a lot of them have told
It
me
sounds like
about
the
that.
Bigfoot that I smelled. Maybe it wasn't a Bigfoot.
Oh no, these
Maybe
are
it
people that definitely saw a dog man.
Yeah, but Larry didn't. Larry didn't actually lay eyes on that thing,
I
though.
just smelt it and heard it walk from my hammock away from me.
Wow.
Huh. Maybe you were about to be a Lunchable and didn't know it.
No, not me.
Spit him out.
Well, since Kumbo brought up the whole cologne thing, we might as well go ahead and cover the
Let's not go there right now. I'm not prepared for that. Let's talk more about the origins of these creatures, where they come from. I know you look back at hieroglyphics, you see Anubis and things like that. Do y'all think there's any correlation between the Dogman and this?
Very well could be. You look at the oldest pictures of Saint Christopher, and he was of a race called the Cynocephali. He was a dog man, and he was about somewhere between 10 and 12 feet tall. You go get online, look up the oldest pictures you can find of Saint Christopher, and especially of him carrying the Egyptian king on his shoulder, so you can get an idea of the scale. And I mean, that's when you really get to digging into the history of these things. What got one of the things that kicked off the Crusades was the fact that the Muslims, or the Nation of Islam, decided that they were going to take on this the Cynocephali that were living in Northwest Africa, and they came in there, and they must have been pretty successful, because there's not a lot of them now. But what I read said that their capital city was around Timbuktu, there in Northwest Africa, and that they scattered them. They killed a bunch and scattered the survivors. And I think while they were there, that's when they started to come across the Strait of Gibraltar and looking for them there in Europe.
Now, in the European tradition, where a lot of the werewolf story originates from, a lot of the Slavic countries and everything, the word werewolf meaning wolf and man, I've often wondered if a lot of those stories don't necessarily refer to a man turning into a wolf, but just something that appeared to be a mix between a wolf and a man, which would be Dogman by modern standards. And if that were the case, I mean, you could be talking a 1,000-year history for these things that we've never put in perspective, because we tend to separate the werewolf mythos with the whole Dogman story. You know what I mean?
Right. And I've given that some thought, and I'm not sure how the werewolves and the loup-garou and all that relate to Dogmen.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And there are different kinds of them. In fact, I could show there's probably a lot more than that, but in my feeble attempt at trying to classify things, years ago, I came up with a type 1 and a type 2 Bigfoot, the type 1 being the patty type and the type 2 being the more common in this part of the country, there you go. The type 2 being the swamp ape, the lighter frame, not quite as tall Bigfoot. And then as I started getting more and more reports of dogman type creatures, I realized that there were for sure two different versions of that. There was one that was basically a dog-headed or baboon-headed, like a type 2 Bigfoot. It had plantigrade feet. In other words, when it walked, its heels hit the ground just like ours and just like a regular Bigfoot. But then there was this other kind that I classified as a type 4, which is a completely different species. It is, they have digitigrade feet. Only their toes and the ball of their foot touch the ground when they walk upright. And the tracks that they leave are like modified dog tracks, but much larger. And I've got some pictures here I can put up that sort of shows the difference between the two. All right, let me see here if I can figure out how to do it.
Want me to do it?
How do you hold it? Let me see here. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, the type 3, I call it the baboon-faced, snouted primate type hominid. And like I said, the build is the same as what I call the type 2, but has a baboon or canine-looking snout with clawed toes and possibly clawed fingers. They've got plantigrade feet, but with clawed toes, typified by the beast of 7 shoots. And I think that they could be a mutation of type 1 or 2 or a genetic throwback or probably the result of inbreeding. And they're considered to be evil and considered more dangerous than regular Bigfoot. This thing sort of cut off part of the slide. But here is a photograph of the beast of 7 shoots. And if you look at the left-hand photograph, it's got a dog under its arm. It's caught and killed a dog. What you see there facing up and forward is the dog's rump and one of his back legs and his tail hanging down, maybe possibly both of his back legs. If you look down below the arm, you see the dog's head and all. And then you can see a blow up of his face over here in the right-hand photograph. And you can see that it's you can see the shoulders and everything over in the left-hand photograph, that it's built like a Bigfoot, but it's got a baboon or snouted-looking face. And it's got its mouth open. And you can't really tell a whole lot here, but next slide, I love this one. I like I can't remember who did this. David, I can't read his name down here. Circa 2008, I think. But that's a great picture that he did. But it looks to me like a hey baby, But that's a really good.
Very wide of Bigfoot.
Yeah. Now, this picture on the right hand side is a type 3 track this was taken out in western Oklahoma near an oil pump out tank that in the gentleman's foot there, he's got on a size 13 muck boot, and I wear a size 13 muck boot, and
wow.
And I scaled it scaled that track off of my boot. That's about a 20-inch track, not counting the claws. And now, I'm not sure how much these claws, it could be that the claws weren't really as long as they look, but as it was stepping off, that it drug its toes a little bit in the snow, and that made the claws look more pronounced than they really are. But one thing you can definitely see, it absolutely positively has the mid-tarsal break that a standard type 1 or type 2 Bigfoot has. So that's why I say the type 3s are some variety of what we know as a regular Bigfoot, just because of the structure of the feet and the structure of the body and the fact it's got wide shoulders. And here's some more artist renderings that some folks sent me of some type 3s. And like I said, some of them call them baboon faced. In this right hand picture here, you really does look baboons faced. Now, then we get to what I call the type 4, and that's the Dogman, the werewolf or canine type. Usually 9 to 10 feet tall, but some reliably reported up to 11 to 12 feet tall. And Vic can back me up on that. There's a surprising number of reports that come in where they're above 10 feet tall, and I have very accurately, by working with some of the eyewitnesses and stuff, have been able to determine that they do get up around 12 feet tall. They have digitigrade feet with clawed toes and fingers. They have hands that very strongly resemble raccoon hands. They've got, but much larger. They got knobby knuckles on their hands, and they have large upper and lower fangs or canines which protrude from a closed mouth. They have noticeable pointed ears like a Doberman with clipped ears or like a German Shepherd. And they are definitely a different species from type 1 to what I call the type 1, 2, or 3. And at the time I wrote this, I classified them as more evil and dangerous than a regular Bigfoot. But these are much more common than what I call the type 3. The type 3s are the rarest from the amount of reports I get. They are the most rare of the Bigfoot dogman type creatures that run around. And here's some more. This is the one on the left is an artist rendering of the beast of LBL, and I can't remember where the one on the right came from.
I think the one on the left's from Barton.
Yeah.
The one on the left is from Barton.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's what is that? The Pikesville monster, I think.
It was. I first saw this on a write up of the base of LBL report.
Yeah.
But it could.
I think it's Barton.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And this next one is a photograph that was sent to me, and unfortunately, I cannot remember who sent it to me to give them credit for it. Nor can I remember. I think it came maybe from up in Michigan somewhere. But if you look there right in the center of it, this thing is looking around from behind about a 2 to 2.5 foot diameter tree. And I wouldn't say that it was a 10 foot tall one, but it could be crouched down. But I know one thing: if I saw that dude looking at me, I think I'd lose a few years off my life.
I wouldn't stick around to take a picture.
Right, and got to give whoever got this picture, got to give them credit. Hopefully, it's not a hoax. I don't know if it's a hoax, but Steve Smith commented over here that they're like Sasquatch, they're everywhere, and he is correct. And by the way, David Hughes, I'm still going to call you back.
Just not tonight.
Yeah. But we got interrupted when we were on the phone today. But anyway, that's a pretty good picture right there. And it looks a lot like Dallas's picture. That back when it was around. Of course, this is I don't know where that came. Here we go. This is the picture here on the right is a still out of a video, and I believe this is a genuine video because of the scale of the gate and everything. It's stepping over a gate in some pretty deep snow, And I believe that this is probably a younger, not full grown Dogman here in this right hand photograph. But this is a freeze frame out of a video that's been around for a long time. And I believe it's a legit video. And of course, this one on the right here is a pretty good rendering of this is the fella that got the picture of the one that came into our camp and was trying to get my dog. This is very, very, very close to what it looked like. Although in the photograph, you couldn't see the tail.
That's what I wanted to ask. Do they all have a tail or do they not have a tail?
Man, most of the reports I've heard say no. I've heard a few reports that say yes. Vic, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I do. Most of the reports that come in when I ask about that, they say they did see a tail. But yeah, there have been some really credible eyewitnesses, a lot of them, who saw the back end and no tail, didn't have a tail at all.
Right. The photograph, the best photograph I've ever seen of one to date was the one that the fellow took in our camp, and of the one that was trying to get my dog. And I could not see a tail on that photograph. And no, we don't have a copy of it. He would not let us. He wouldn't give us a copy of it.
You think maybe they got a tail and they just like when a dog gets scared or like startled, they kind of tuck it against their leg to the inside. I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm just wondering.
Yeah. We're not going to talk about little people.
Dog without.
Let's talk. Well, we can talk about them later.
Oh, the little people. Larry's got a fascination with the little people.
Yeah.
So, Kumbo,
you know, not to interrupt, guys, but I want to put something out there before we move on. When these guys get upset, not all the time, but there seems to be a pattern of where it's not uncommon for them to tuck their tail underneath between their legs, so it kind of sticks out in front of their legs, tuck tight, down and under, and then forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Huh.
That would definitely explain some reports I've heard.
Uh-oh.
Absolutely, positively.
Let's not talk about those reports.
Okay.
Well,
how you wrote them down. I know you, Kumbo. I know Kumbo. I know him.
Bama asked, and I thought it was a pretty good question. Have you had anyone send you really good photos, videos, or vocals?
Yeah, Bam always asks great questions. Well, yeah, I've had some amazing evidence shared with me over the years. By far and away, the most impressive, well, I've had some photos that were just absolutely amazing as well that have been sent to me. But all in all, the most impressive evidence that's ever been sent to me was a video. There was video footage that a gentleman contacted me back in, I think it was 2015. It was back around the time when I started the show. And he sent me this footage that he said was taken in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. He said that either he or a friend of his found out that a dogman or dogmen plural were hanging out in this area in those foothills. Well, either he or a buddy of his, it's been like a year, so I can't remember. You talk to so many eyewitnesses, it becomes a blur. But yeah, he said that either he or a buddy of his went to that area, strapped a more expensive game cam. You know, the more expensive game cams, you can set them to either snap a picture on motion when it detects motion or film when it detects motion. Well, this one was a more expensive one that you had that option. They set it to film when it detected motion. Well, it was a bright, sunny afternoon, hardly a cloud in the sky, if I remember right. They strapped that camera to a tree, and then they hung some bait about 5 feet away from the camera lens. Well, from the left to right, coming in from left to right, you see this dog man walk between the camera lens and that bait on the branch. And after it got like right in front of the camera lens, it turned around and went for the bait. So as it was coming in, I got to see it from the front, and it was more than close enough to pick out individual hairs. When it turned around to go for the bait, it had its back to you. And we saw, when I say we, I'm talking about Richard Eady. That was back around the time when I had aired an episode with a gentleman named Richard Eady, who was well known back then for analyzing film of Sasquatch and other Sasquatch evidence. Well, I thought, wow, it just blew me away. It was so impressive. I asked the guy who sent that footage to me if it would be okay if I shared it with a man that I knew who analyzed film footage and photos, you name it, just to get his take on it. And he said, sure, yeah, by all means. It was a private link on YouTube. So yeah, it wasn't a public video. So I copied the private link, sent it to Richard Eady, had him take a look at it, and it just blew him away. So yeah, we were both watching the footage, talking about it over the phone, and he was about ready to swallow his tongue. I mean, it was that impressive. So yeah, after a certain period of time, I can't remember how long it was, but after a certain period of time, that link went dead. But yeah, I never shared it with anyone other than Richard Eady because it was sent to me in good faith that I wouldn't do that. So I honored his wishes, like I do with everyone when they send evidence to me. But there's been that. There have been photos that have been sent in that just are blow your socks off good. Daylight, bright daylight photos where, bam, in the wide open. You don't have to look through anything at all, just in the wide open. There's the Dogman right there. So these people you see in forums or wherever say, well, I don't believe in Dogman because there's no good evidence. Well, that's just their opinion because that evidence is out there. They just haven't seen it. So yeah, there are amazing photos out there. There is amazing footage. So the idea that they don't exist because there is no impressive evidence, yeah, that's just bunk.
Do y'all have it? Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Larry.
Well, you had a question about what he was talking about. I got a different question. Go ahead.
I was going to ask if on the video, if the one that you were talking about, if it had a tail. And I was also going to say that, you know, I've seen some stuff firsthand where it just couldn't be shared or whatnot, but of boogers. I've seen one of supposed Dogman, and I tell you what, that thing was so good. I thought for sure it was out of a TV show or a movie, and I did everything in my power to debunk that thing, and I couldn't. But like Bigfoot, I've met a lot of people that have some of the best photos I've ever seen on their phone, and they don't publish them. So to your point, there is evidence out there. A lot of people just keep it to themselves.
That's right, they do, and for good reason. I mean, look at the people who come forward with impressive photos of Sasquatch, how they're treated. If you come forward with evidence that's really impressive of a Dogman, do you want to go through that? I don't blame them. And also, too, the government doesn't want Sasquatch's existence to be put out there and to be proven. Well, if you think they have a thing against allowing that to happen, well, if you want to talk about Dogman, you could ramp that up by a factor of 100. So it's not in your best interest if you have a very impressive photo or impressive footage of a Dogman. It is not in your best interest to put it out there because the authorities definitely do not want that to happen. They'll do whatever they can to keep their existence from being proven. And if you have evidence that's above a certain quality and you put it out there, then you're kind of putting yourself at risk.
Right. The question I had, we go to LBL a lot and do calls and get responses. What differentiates a response from a Dogman over a Bigfoot? Is there any audio that is of known Dogman compared to a Bigfoot?
I'm glad you asked that because that's what I was wanting to ask too. Because I'm always worried about us making calls.
Right.
Well, Tim's got a good recording there of a Dogman that he recently captured. I heard, and yeah, that's a Dogman right there that I heard. So he's the one to ask about that.
Well, yeah,
And
when you do spectral analysis on it, it's unlike anything that this Bigfoot, that we've recorded. This thing, and that's one of the really good audio that a fellow in our group recorded up there in LBL a couple of years ago. The disturbing thing about that is, I mean, it was unbelievable what it sounded like, when it started up, and it started. I did a call and it answered, and I was expecting we were in an area where we had been successfully called up a Bigfoot in the past, but as soon as this thing cut loose, we all knew that this was something different. And the scary thing, there were 3 of them. There were 2 out to the southwest of us, and there was 1 to the northeast of us, and we were in between. The 2 out to the southwest of us stayed put. The one that to the northeast of us was coming in loud, hard, and fast, which was rather disturbing. When we ran those calls through a spectrum analyzer, the very, very strange things, unfortunately, they were not recorded in all raw format or a full spectrum format. They were recorded as a MP3, which cuts off everything below 35 hertz.
that's right.
There were still 9 very distinct narrow bandwidths of sound in those calls, which completely differentiated them from the coyotes in the background and from Bigfoot calls that we've analyzed. And we don't know any way to recreate those unless you did it with lab equipment or something. But that's what was. In fact, when my buddy Jack ran the thing through the spectrum analyzer, he called me back. He said, "Kumbo," he said, "Look at this," and sent it to me. I'm like, "Holy moly!" And I've done a lot of spectrum analysis of everything from infrasound to all types of things, starting back in the early 1980s. And this was unlike anything I'd ever seen. And Roger Williams asked, is it close to wolf howl? As a matter of fact, it sounded on the surface very similar to a wolf howl, but deeper and a lot louder.
He
But
stole my question. Roger.
But when we ran it, like I said, we ran it through the spectrum analyzer. It didn't look anything like a wolf howl. It sounds to the ear very similar to a wolf howl, but when you look at it in the spectrum analyzer, it doesn't look anywhere similar. It's like the thing's got. When Jack amplified it a bunch, he said he saw very faint residual traces down below 35 hertz, but they were so low he couldn't do anything with them, which that would make sense because when we heard it in person, there was a very low frequency, a powerful low frequency part of the howls that really rattled us. and the thing is, we through doing some triangulation, because fortunately we recorded it on a stereo recorder with 2 separate microphones, probably 3.5, 4 feet apart. And we were able to do some playing around with the sound levels from each mic and knowing where they were pointed. And we're able to do some rough from those of us that were there, plus the data from the mics. We were able to get pretty good locations of where the 3 animals were. And the closest one was over 400 yards away. And when we figured that out, it amazed all of us that it was that loud from that far away. So,
Misty, can you play this? Maybe.
Yeah.
What?
All right,
What are you
all
trying?
right.
Oh wait,
All right. Listen to this and see.
To play the spectrogram.
Not me talking. All right, that's good. Is it similar to that?
it was not really.
I might be
I wish
mistaken.
I've got it on this computer. I just don't know how to get it to you where you could play it.
Well, it's all right because that was less than 100 yards from us, and I didn't want you to say it was it. So that's fine.
Some stuff in the woods that I'm worried about being something other than a booger. And when you make a call, because Larry, I mean, we've been out, boogering together, and we both got kind of a raspy, almost like owl call sort of, and right. That always worries me that I'm going to call in a daggone dog man, which is what it is. But
I'm pretty sure that Kumbo did a show on Beast with Larry and Mark, and I thought that Mark did the spectro analysis on the Dogman call that Kumbo is talking about, but I might be wrong on that. We tried to get the audio loaded up beforehand, but we just didn't have enough time to load it. But Kumbo does have the audio. In fact, he can play it right now, but it's really hard to hear. It's very faint coming through his computer.
Let me go back. Y'all go on. I'm gonna dig around on here. I'm gonna minimize this and see if I can find a version of it that's louder.
Okay. All right.
I'll be back in a minute.
Have y'all ever heard of the story about Planet Serpo?
No. What? Are you gonna fill in the dead space?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's related to Dogman. I'll give a synopsis. No. Basically, aliens, they crash landed here like Roswell and stuff. And we did like a foreign exchange student deal where some humans went to their planet and the aliens stayed here. But what the humans saw on that planet was them making hybrids out of human DNA and stuff. And one of them was supposedly a Dogman type creature. That's just a quick synopsis of it.
Okay.
Great.
You can look it up on the internet. But as soon as I heard that,
you can get it.
Mission to Planet Serpo.
Mission to Planet Serpo.
Yeah.
Okay.
They just mentioned that briefly, that they are doing experiments on DNA and making hybrids with human DNA and animals and stuff. And one of them was mentioned to have a dog head. And I immediately went, oh, wow.
That's it. That's the answer. It's a foreign exchange alien.
Well, no, that wasn't one of the aliens, but go ahead.
Hey, Vic, do you want to answer that question? What do you think these things are? Physical, something supernatural?
Well, if you do this for any period of time, and if you have a certain exposure to so many eyewitnesses, it's natural. You're going to bounce back and forth from at one moment being convinced they have to be flesh and blood, and then the next moment you're convinced they have to be supernatural. If you think about it, why would a creature from the ether need to eat fetid roadkill in the middle of the night on the side of the road? Why would it need to drink nasty, stagnant water out of a pond with duckweed all over it? And then on the other hand, if they are flesh and blood, why do you have so many credible eyewitnesses reporting having an encounter here in this state, and then they go home immediately 2-3 states away, and then the next night in their backyard they see the same Dogman? So you bounce back and forth from one moment
Right.
being convinced it has to be one way, and then after you speak with 4 or 5 other eyewitnesses who are very credible who swing the other direction, you think, okay, well, it must be the other. So I can't answer that. All I can do is guess.
Hey, Vic, I have a question. After listening to just a ton of your shows, there seems to be like I wouldn't say a common thread, but I've heard several times of people coming up on these things either laying in the road or right on the side of the road. Do you have any insight as to what that might be about? I mean, it just kind of seems like an odd behavior.
Well, not if you want someone to stop their car, get out, and frighten the you-know-what out of them. No, I don't know for sure that's why they do that, but it sure would be a good tactic if that's what you're out for, which, for whatever reason, these guys, they sure seem to get a kick out of terrorizing people and frightening them to within an inch of their life. So, and it has happened a lot of times where people come up and over a rise and they see something on the road. They think it must be a dead cow or something else laying in the road. They stop, get out, walk around in front of the car or truck, and then the Dogman stands up.
Okay,
So, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. I think that might have a lot to do with it, but again, that's a guess. I don't know. I can't read the mind, so I don't know.
Can y'all still hear me?
There was,
Mhm.
yes, sir.
You know, I think, you know, there's a fair amount of sightings of them, like crossing roads or getting ready to cross road. The one I saw back in April, it came walking up out of a creek bottom, up onto the shoulder of the road, and then I was coming around a curve, and my screen is frozen.
Yep.
But anyway, okay. Oh well.
We can still hear you.
Okay. Well, anyway, it came walking up out of this creek bottom up onto the shoulder road like it was, and had actually taken a step or two out onto the pavement. And I came around and my high beams hit it, and it immediately turned around and dropped and stepped back off in the creek bottom. And I stomped on the brakes and I turned on my what I call my ditch lights. They're the driving lights, but they've got a really wide spread on them, and they will light up down in the ditches on the side of the road. And I eased up there and I mashed the button and rolled the window down over there on the passenger side, and I came rolling up and I'm looking over there, and when I got up close to it, there it was standing there looking at me, and its top of his head was pretty close to even with the level of the pavement, and it was looking me right in the eye, and again it had its lip curled up, and its nose curled up, and baring its teeth at me, and had its ears laid back, and I looked at it for a minute. We maintained eye contact for a few seconds, and I decided it was time to get out of there. I realized that thing, if they were like what I had heard, that thing could get up the bank and snatch me out of that truck before I could say dadgummit. So I decided it's time to go.
Kumbo had on his high karate cologne.
It was canoe.
Canoe.
Yeah. Double splash of canoe.
I've done that though. Tried put on different perfumes and things, just trying to have a different smell to see if it reacts to it that way.
You're trying to lure one in?
I'm trying to lure something apparently.
Oh, you're probably luring stuff, but I think if you got a dog man, you might regret it.
It may be dog man, but it's a different kind of dog man.
No, a doggy man.
Right.
Oh, a man acting like a dog.
Vic, what's your favorite encounter that sticks out the most to you? Which it's probably not one, but if you can think of one.
Well, I don't have any favorite encounters. I mean, I don't see this as a novelty. Looking on the outside in, when you aren't exposed to so many eyewitnesses who've literally had their lives ruined by traumatic experiences or harassed, yeah, I just don't see it as entertainment. But as far as favorite encounters, no, I don't look at them that way. There are encounters that I think are some of the most frightening ones, but to actually point to one, I mean, I've been exposed to so many over the years. It's hard to point to just one. And
yeah, I should have said the one that stands out.
Well,
not favorite.
The first encounter that was shared with me, I touched on this at the start of the show. There was a guy in 2007 who, when he found out about my interest in Dogman, he reached out to me and let me know that he lived on the border of the LBL. And yeah, this was 2007. It's almost been 20 years now, but so the facts are really fuzzy. I'll just do the best I can. But yeah, he lived right on the edge of the LBL. And from what I remember, his wife was out with the girls or something like that. It was pretty late at night. So it's just him and his dog in the house. It was a 2-story home. And the way it was set up, he said that if you go to the steps, walk out of their bedroom, look down the steps, you had a view of the door and the back wall of the kitchen. Well, he had been laying up there in bed. His wife was normally there to talk with and everything, watch TV with. But since she was gone, he was kind of out of sorts. He wasn't used to that. So he was laying up there watching TV, if I remember right. And all of a sudden he heard this strange sound, he said. It sounded like a strange sound coming from downstairs. Well, he just figured it was nothing. It was maybe the house settling or something like that. The wind, you name it. So he didn't pay it any mind. Well, he kept hearing that sound. So eventually he turned down the volume and was listening. Didn't hear anything. So yeah, he figured he must have been imagining it. So he turned the volume back up. Well, then he started hearing it again. So he actually left the volume up. And I think he might have crept to the top of the steps or something and looked down. And when he looked down, he saw this long, hairy arm with claws on the tips of its hands and like a shoulder reaching through the doggy door in the bottom of that kitchen door. And yeah, here was this dog man, and the dog man's head came through too, I think he said. But it was just clear it was way too big to make it through this doggy door. The doggy door, I think he said he had a German Shepherd or something. So it was a pretty big doggy door, but it just clearly couldn't make its way all the way through it. But the whole creepy thing there is, why was it trying to get through that doggy door? What was its end game? So, yeah, that really makes you wonder. But, yeah, that was the first encounter. I'm pretty sure that was the first encounter that was ever shared with me, and that definitely stands out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what worries me. I'm afraid it's going to ruin being out in the woods or even, follow me home. Not just a Dogman, but, something like that in general. Because I love to be outside, but I love to go out and look for this stuff too. But I don't want it to run it for me.
Well, I can appreciate you feeling that way. I can appreciate you feeling that way, Misty. But what was it, Saturday? I went for a 2-mile walk through the woods. I didn't have anybody with me. Went for a 2-mile walk. I've got woods behind me where I live. I've got this woods I went for a walk through. It's got dogmen in it at least some time of the year. It's got boogers in it at least some time of the year. I went for a 2-mile walk without anyone with me through that woods Saturday. I did that. And I did that because of this whole thing, like I said at the top of the show, this understanding. People misunderstand these guys. They see them, they think werewolf, monstrous killing machine, but yeah, if you see them for what they're all about, instead of turning them into something that they're not, of course, they can be monstrous. I'm sure you have examples of any species out there that's going to be dangerous. People, horses, pigs, you name it. But in general, when you look at the big picture, if you do have an encounter, the odds of it harming you are very, very small. So I really think you should just focus on enjoying life. If you want to be out in the woods, and go be in the woods. I mean, I hop on horses, and I've been in a Dogman woods far enough in where even a powerful rifle like a 300 Win Mag, you wouldn't be able to hear it fired from the edge of the forest. I was so far in on a horse in a woods that I guarantee you that there were dogmen out there. You just have to live your life and don't let this ruin it. Life goes on, and if you have an encounter, please remember the things that I'm telling you, that in almost every case, they're just trying to get a rise out of you. They're not trying to actually kill you or anything. So, yeah, please don't let this ruin that.
Hey, Vic, do you have you I know I tell people that are going to go out with me out to, don't wear red or yellow.
I love wearing red, just for that matter.
I'm talking about in the woods.
I do.
And
I know.
And I've
all
heard,
week.
I mean, I've heard, it was really interesting. I had heard talking to people and stuff and law enforcement and stuff about people that disappeared and how many of them had red on and then how many of them had yellow on. And, to the point that I had heard the first time I ever heard this expression was back in the 1960s from Jacques Cousteau, the old, the guy, the deep sea explorer. And he said they quit wearing yellow on any of their dive suits because they, got attacked by barracudas and sharks and moray eels, and they started calling it yum yellow. But then, I started hearing about, people that disappeared that had on yellow shirts or yellow raincoats or stuff. And then, a lot of people that disappeared and had on red. And as a matter of fact, even old Pilates that did the, missing 411, he picked up on that. It was of the reports he had gotten, there was enough. That was one of the common threads through a lot of them were that the people had on red or yellow. And have you heard much? Do you pay attention to the color of clothes that you wear out there, Vic?
No, I don't. I just wear whatever and I go. That's all there is to it. But when I talk with eyewitnesses, I don't check into things like that as far as what color clothing they're wearing or anything like that. I'm so keyed in on trying to find out what it is about their encounter that's causing them to have so much of a hang up and having so much trouble being able to get back to good that I'm not a researcher. I'm not a Dogman researcher. I'm just focused on trying to help this eyewitness I'm on the phone with get things back on the track so they can go and enjoy the woods and do what they want to do out there, camp, fish, whatever, instead of gathering evidence like that. There might be a pattern to that as far as Dogmen would go, but no, I'd be lying if I told you otherwise. I don't know. I don't really pay attention to that.
I spend time with people on the, talking to them on the phone that have had, bad encounters, and they're, very upset about what has happened, and it's, changed their life for the bad. And I try to walk through them and question them and about, try to gather what facts I can about what was going on and, what they were wearing, what kind of food items were around, what the weather was, things like that. And I try to, try to determine what might have provoked that, what they might have done unknowingly that provoked that, that act, that reaction. But, I can think of several researchers that used to run with us a lot that always had on red. But anyway, me personally, when I'm out beating around in the woods by myself, I don't ever wear red or yellow. And, I've heard too many bad things, and read too many bad things about folks that had on those things. But anyway, but I try to, figure out why something did what it did.
Kumbo is a joke killer. I work in the streets of Memphis. I don't get real scared about a Dogman or Bigfoot.
I don't blame you there.
Sure enough, you got other stuff to worry about.
Yeah, I worry about my everyday life, not weekend jaunts in the woods.
Yeah.
Hey, Vic, I got one more question. Do you have any idea, with all the people you've spoken to, do you have a rough estimate of where most of the sightings come from? Like, what part of the country geographically do they come from? And is there anything really in common with the locations that you hear about the sightings? Is there anything in common? Like with Bigfoot, we often hear a lot of references to the close proximity to water, for example.
No, it runs the gamut. I mean, I've spoken with people who had encounters in deserts and people who had encounters in the city and encounters in places where there really wasn't much in the way of running water. It seems like encounters can happen almost anywhere. In the middle of nowhere, in the woods, like a boreal type encounter or location. It seems like it just runs the gamut. There doesn't really seem to be a pattern to that, but seems like most of the encounters that come in are normally in the Kentucky, Tennessee, Pennsylvania area, but they still do come in from all over the U.S. and other countries. And what was it yesterday? Got an encounter that came in from Belgium. They happen all over.
Okay. Sharpo aliens dropping them off everywhere.
They'll drop them off anywhere.
Vic, in Bigfoot stories, you have people that are emotionally distressed or maybe even physically hurt that the Bigfoot help back to a main camp or console somebody that's having some emotional distress. Do you get any encounters in those type situations with a Dogman?
No, normally you're not going to get any encounters coming in of what you consider to be altruistic dogmen that are going to actually go out of the way to help you. But there was one time where a lady was at some concert. I don't know what concert it was, but all the porta-johns had long lines, and she really had to go. Well, she's looking around for options. She sees this tree line way off in the distance and thinks, okay, well, I'll just head for those trees over there and do it there. Well, she just hurried over there to the trees, which were way off. And when she went to the tree line, unfortunately, there were some men that surrounded her and they tried to rape her. Well, they had just started trying to do that when all of a sudden this Dogman made its presence known, and it basically taught them how to doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet he was persuasive.
I bet he was.
Yeah, they were armed too, but I don't think they fired a shot, if I remember right.
Yeah, I don't think I'd fire a shot at a 10-foot Dogman.
No.
Or a 7-foot one.
No, not even a 4-foot one.
Right.
No.
A lot of people go out on the Dogman subject. I see a lot of comments on some of the Dogman shows and everything where people talk about, I got a 300 Win Mag or 338 Lapua, and I'd take one out. Man, there ain't no way if they were going to react anything like a booger would, there ain't no way I'd take a shot at one. And a lot of times boogers, you hear people reference that where there's one, there's more than one. With Dogman, it almost seems like you hear about them being like a solitary kind of creature, but I wonder if that's just we don't know, we don't see the other ones. There's a possibility, I reckon, that they are in packs as well.
Well, I've heard reports of them actually dragging prey back to their family.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard more than one report of that. And even when, when the prey was later found, that it had been fed on by more than one animal, by multiple animals of varying sizes as well.
Now, are you talking about the thing that Larry don't want to talk about? Or are you talking about the
that's the number? That's the one I'm the most familiar with, that I've got the most firsthand data of, or close to firsthand data about. But
a lot of people are really familiar with the Beast of LBL encounter, referring to the family that was in the RV. But there are a lot of people who still haven't heard the other LBO encounter about the bow hunter. Do you want to briefly touch on that, just to give people an idea in case they haven't heard that one?
Okay. And I'm open to Vic. If you can add to this, I'd be glad to hear that. And but I got this directly from one of the law enforcement officers that was first on the scene, and one of the two officers he was one of the two officers that was first on the scene, and he and that other officer were also the ones that found the body. And this happened in LBL, and what had happened was a guy had gone bow hunting, and he had told his wife that he may be in late on Sunday. If he got something down right at dark, and he'd be, by the time he found it and got back to camp, he'd probably just go on and stay there, come home Monday morning. Or excuse me, he'd be home late Sunday night. Well, Monday morning came and he wasn't home. And the wife called LBL and called the ranger station, and it happened to be right at shift change. And this person that I know was just coming on duty. And when the wife described his vehicle, one of the other rangers that was just coming on duty says, "Hey, I know where that guy's camped. I've seen that vehicle. Come on," he said to the fellow that I knew, and let's go up there and check on it. They went up there, and when they drove into the camp, and Debbie, I may be off some, but let me think. I think this happened around 1989, 1990, maybe spring of 1990, possibly. I may be off a year or two. I remember, but anyway, they get to the. Who's that out there, Greg? Okay. Anyway, lost my train of thought. Oh, anyway, they get to the camp. Get there, the tent's torn up. The sleeping bag is laying out on the ground, 20, 30 feet away. It's been ripped up. The guy's bow is laying another 15, 20 feet or so away. It's broken. There's blood all over the place. Some people say, he didn't tell me this, but I've heard other people say that the truck was beat up. But I didn't hear that from the person that told me this, who was one of the first two officers there. They found a very distinct drag line where the victim had been drug off, and they followed it. It went for over a mile, a little bit over a mile down into a hollow, into some fields down in the bottom of the hollow. They found where he had been fed on, and it had torn the clothes off of the man, and they found his clothes laying off to the side. Now, the way I remember it being told to me was the clothes were laid off to the side, and his body was up in a tree. That also jives with what had happened with one of the victims in the RV park up there, where the family got killed.
Right.
Okay. When they got the guy's body down out of the tree, they found that he had been fed on by at least 4 individuals. The one that did the killing, one that was very slightly smaller, and 2 much smaller ones that they figured they were its offspring. And they said possibly a 5th one, but for sure 4 of them. But the big thing is, and I have heard other reports on this, that when these things get a hold of large prey, very often the Bigfoot reports where they kill hogs, dogs, stuff like that, people, they sling them over their shoulder, or they tuck them up under their arm and tote them like a watermelon under their arm. Most of the reports that I have personally heard of dogmen carrying off large prey that they've killed, they've drug it. Anyway, when this was told to me, it was soon enough after it had happened that the roads and everything in that area were still torn all to pieces by all of the vehicles that came in, law enforcement vehicles and such as that came into that area after this happened. And that's the Reader's Digest version of it. And Vic, if you've got anything to add to that, go ahead.
No, I don't have anything to add to that. That's all. I've heard about that incident, but yeah, I don't have any inside information on that. So yeah, nothing to add. Oh,
one thing I would like to add. My friend he's not a friend. He's an associate. We never were really friends, but we never ran around together when we were kids or even as adults or anything. But anyway, one of the things that he said was in the course of this investigation, they pulled out the files from the early 1980s incident where the family was killed.
Yeah.
He got to see the original files or at least a copy of the original, whatever they had there in LBL. He got to see them, and they compared like the bite radiuses of the bites that were on the family members that got killed in the 80s, and then and on this bow hunter, and to see if, and the claw marks and the claws were, the wounds inflicted by the claws were very, very different from the wounds that inflicted by the claws of a cougar or a bear or anything else that was known to walk in this part of the country. Excuse me, this part of the world, in the 20th century. But they said that the way that the claws had ripped through the flesh and struck the ribs and everything, they were absolutely positively not bear claws and not cougar claws, and they matched the claw marks from when the family was killed.
But they did keep a file on it.
Oh yeah,
they had a file there.
Yes, yeah. There was full forensic analysis done on the claws. for one thing, the claws are much larger and heavier than cougar claws and not hooked as much. And they weren't hooked anywhere near as much as a bear's claws are. And they, and for that question, Diane Fowler, remember this is very early 1990s. Don't know if they did any of that. I'm sure there's probably some. I'd bet a pile of money that they kept enough samples and stuff that they could probably do that DNA analysis now, and it may have already been done. Who knows? But they weren't doing DNA analysis in 1990, 91.
You said there was several. Sorry, Spencer. Do you think they attack like a pack mentality? You know what I mean? Like when a dog jumps on another dog, if there's more around, they'll all get to fighting. I mean, it's in a dog's nature to.
What the fella told me that was there when he was one of the two that found the body, and he said that it didn't look like, like when a wolf pack or pack of coyotes gets a hold of something, they grab a hold of it and they sit there and pull and pull and pull, and they'll actually tear it apart. He said it didn't really look like that. He said it would look like it was, like it was a tight family unit that fed, and that didn't show much evidence that they had fought among themselves and had ripped the body asunder. Like one of them was trying to rip off an arm and drag it off or something. He said it didn't look like that.
I've seen what coyotes do to prey, and that's a mess for sure.
Yeah.
As far as their claws go, think more grizzly claws than black bear claws. Black bears have more of a hooked claw. Well, think more of a grizzly claw. You have a pretty good idea, except for Manila, normally black.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, they even looked at grizzly claws, Vic. They compared it to black bear claws, cougars. And I think they even, compared them to like what a lion or a tiger would do in case, we had there was an escaped animal or something, somebody's escaped pet, supposedly that could have done it. I mean, they eliminated everything that's recognized. I'm not going to say known, because I think they've known about these things forever. But, anyway, that's the as far as Scump says, I guess that's all I got to say about that.
What about Dogman's intelligence? Are they more animalistic or methodical? We equate Bigfoot to be a high intelligence, survival, evasive. What about Dogman? Do we learn anything from the encounters that say they have?
I don't know. Vic's gotten a lot. He's got the numbers advantage on me, so I'd say let's let Vic take the first shot at that. I'm really interested in what he's got to say on that.
Well, they've got some pretty alarming feats under their belts. As far as intelligence would go, they just might be on par with us. In some ways, they might supersede us as far as intelligence, and in other ways, maybe not. But they do all sorts of things that prove they're not dumb animals out there stumbling, bumbling around. So, yeah, they know what they're doing. They really do. It's hard to explain how that could be, but they definitely do seem to be very intelligent.
Vic, have you heard anything related to Dogman's, stepping in and out of portals or just disappearing in plain sight in front of anyone?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, quite a few reports. Squirrel, you're slouching.
I just seen something weird walk by the window.
You okay? That's not
dark
good.
outside and I'm alone.
That's not good.
You think you're alone.
Yeah, apparently not, because something just blocked out my back porch lot.
Ooh.
That's not
Okay.
good. I forgot what we were talking about.
Lord.
What was the question?
No, I was just asking about the a lot of Bigfoot stuff is you hear a lot of references to boogers doing, stuff that would be equated to supernatural things like disappearing,
Cloaking.
stepping into portals, or what do they call it? Cloaking, where they
Yeah.
disappear, all that kind of stuff. Even mind speak. Have you ever heard anybody reference anything with Dogman about mind speak?
Oh yeah, plenty of times.
Really?
Normally it's once in a blue moon. Doesn't happen all that often, but yeah, there have been quite a few eyewitnesses over the years who've told me about experiencing that. So apparently it happens. Portals, mind speak, and all the strange things pretty much that you hear about Sasquatch supposedly doing, you hear about with Dogman eyewitnesses experiencing that too. Can't explain it, but they report that as well.
Vic, one of the things that I'm noticing more, and I'm getting more reports from people saying that they've seen Bigfoot and Dogman together. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it seems like you do hear more and more reports of that. Up until a certain point, it seemed like those two mixed like oil and water, but as time
Correct.
has gone by, I've heard more and more reports of that happening. But also, too, even back around the late teens, the 20 teens, there were reports coming in where people would say, okay, well, on my property, the Dogmen run with the Sasquatch. And in most cases, when you would dig deeper, you'd find out that it was a case where people were finding Dogman prints next to smaller Sasquatch prints or over the top of small to mid-sized Sasquatch prints. I'm not sure that wasn't a predatory situation there where the Sasquatch went through, maybe a tweener Sasquatch went through, a Dogman later on was following it, and it might have looked like those two were together, but they weren't. So
I agree with that, Vic. I've heard several stories of Dogmen, attacking or what's the word, predatoring or whatever on younger, smaller Bigfoot, and then I've heard that other stories where a big alpha booger, big alpha Bigfoot in a grown Dogman tying up and having a heck of a fight, and it's the Bigfoot that comes out on top of those, unless there's other Dogmen. I've heard one report where there were like a pack of Dogmen piled in. The guy said that the Bigfoot was winning, and and it had a hold of the Dogman, and it was sort of doing the death scream, and other Dogmen showed up and turned the tables, and the Bigfoot ended up having to break off and haul, get out of there.
No, I believe it. One thing to consider, though, is like we talked about earlier, these guys can be 11, 12 feet tall at maturity. A male could, apparently.
Yeah.
And yeah, boogers get really big. But if you consider the fact that you take a 250-pound man and you ask pretty much any 250-pound man, how much are you going to bet on your ability to win a fight to the death with a 150-pound Rottweiler, Cane Corso, whatever formidable, Boerboel, you name the formidable guardian breed dog, and you give the man 100 pounds of an advantage. Is that man going to want to tangle with that dog that weighs 100 pounds less? So, and dogs like that don't have claws on the tips of their fingers or on their toes they can use. So it really makes me wonder how much of a size advantage would a booger have to be able to cleanly, conveniently dispatch a Dogman. I mean, if you're talking about a 10-foot tall Dogman, I can only imagine how big a booger would have to be able to handle that. But I could be wrong about that. I don't know. I don't know. But it makes you wonder.
There are a few boogers, not very many, but there was a pretty well-known booger out in East Texas that was seen multiple times. I mean, I personally laid eyes on it twice, and that dude was 12 feet tall, and it was that booger was seen many times, and that's the only one I know of that an actual Bigfoot that was that height. But even the big alpha out on our farm that he's right at 10 feet tall. He is massive. He's over 4 feet wide across the shoulder. My best guesstimate on what he weighs is somewhere 1,150 pounds, maybe even 1,200 pounds. I mean, he is massive, and the strength things that I've heard those big ones do, that I think their strength is more like primates like gorillas and chimps, whereas pound for pound they've got more than 7 times the strength that humans have. So I think that and the fact that we know that they literally can tear humans to pieces, snatch their heads right off in just a split second, yank their arms out in a split second, pull their legs off even in a split second, and how that they can kill, big hogs, just whomp them with their fist and kill them instantly. We know that Bigfoot are immensely powerful and strong, and so I think that their bulk and their mass overcomes that advantage of the claws and the possibly large, and bigger teeth. That I would probably bet that if a Bigfoot decided to bite you, that their bite strength would be quite a bit stronger than even a mature Dogman. I may be wrong about that, but that's my gut feeling.
Yeah, you just might be right about that. Those are really good points. And you just said something I want to shed some light on. You talked about that booger's weight that was 10 feet tall.
Right.
When I hear eyewitnesses tell me about seeing a Sasquatch, for example, and I ask them, okay, how tall is it? Well, about 8 feet tall. How much do you think it weighed? Oh, about maybe 600 pounds, 650. Well, understand there is a scientific principle called square cube law that states if you double the mass of an object, then if you keep all the proportions the same of that object, its weight's going to multiply by a factor of 8. So to break this out, if you take a cube that's 1 foot tall by 1 foot deep by 1 foot wide, and that cube weighs 100 pounds because it's so dense. Okay, that 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot cube weighs 100 pounds. Okay, now if you make that cube, if you bring in other cubes the same size and put them all together, so that now you have a structure that is a 2 foot tall square cube. How much would that weigh? Well, that's easy. It would take a total of 8 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot cubes to make a cube structure that's 2 feet tall, 2 feet wide, 2 feet front to back. And that same law holds true with anything, as long as the proportions and the density stays the same. If you take a person, for example, a man that's 6 feet tall, if you increase his height to 12 feet tall, well, if all the proportions stayed the same, if he weighed 200 pounds at 6 feet tall, that man at 12 feet tall would weigh 200 by 8, 1,600 pounds. But remember now, boogers can have a much more robust structure than a man. So it's going to be proportionally thicker front to back. It's going to be wider. It's just going to have arms that are thicker, legs thicker, all that. So it's going to weigh even more. A 12-foot booger is going to weigh even more than 1,600 pounds. So, yeah, I mean, these guys, they can be ridiculously heavy, 2,500 pounds possibly, maybe even 3,000 pounds. So, yeah, who knows how much these guys can weigh?
You know, Vic, I've done that figuring in the past, and I'm glad you brought this up because I never had the guts to bring that up in the past, to be perfectly honest with you. And I've done some of those calculations on things that I've seen, and I couldn't believe the numbers. I mean, I was scared to share those numbers with people, but I am very, very glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. There's so many things about these guys we don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's the bottom line. I mean, we don't know. I mean, the best we can do is talk to people like y'all that have had experience, or like in Vic's case, spoken to just multiple people with experience on it. Guys, we're hitting right on the 2-hour mark right here. Does anybody have anything else that they really want to touch on before we start to wrap it up?
I've got a few questions. So hold on.
Me too. I want to know what the mind speak was, what they said to the person.
Well, I know what I can tell you. What one really good researcher told me. One said to him one time in his mind, told him to get out of here.
I figure that's probably what most of the mind speak is.
Yeah. And that's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have listened. Did Vic ever meet the late Peter Byrne? Yep, Peter Byrne just passed away.
I heard about that. No, never met him. I spoke with Robert Morgan on a podcast years ago, but never spoke with Peter or met him or anything.
Yeah. Sound as though they have a bigger lung capacity than a Brahma. Yeah.
Hoosier Squat has asked me this question twice. Why do you think your buddy won't share his pic of the Dogman? I don't know. I think he had ideas that he was going to make a bunch of money off that picture or something, but he literally would not even let us hold it and look at it.
Is that the guy that ran to the photo shop in the middle of the night or whatever?
Yes, he took off. He took off to the Walmart in Clarksville, Tennessee, and waited till they opened that morning. And he came back with a big stack of 8x10s or 8.5 by 11s, whatever the biggest enlargements that they could do there. While he waited.
There was quite a few people on that camp out, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, there were. Yeah, there were several people that saw the pictures.
Yeah. What did you say? What about look? Bama always brings up stuff. Don't be coming down here to Fayette County when you leave, Greg.
Hey man, I love that white barbecue sauce.
Oh Lord, Kumbo, no,
not there.
No, Kumbo, I'll cut your microphone. Don't even start on the white barbecue sauce. White barbecue sauce is not barbecue sauce.
Bama, I started to bring my Auburn hat and wear it, just for you.
I just posted that.
It's moving on me. I'm trying to get this
Come
one.
on, Misty.
I'm still thinking.
I'm still trying to absorb what Vic said and not be worried about Dogman. We started the show 2 hours ago, and I'm still like, no, Vic, I can't do it. I understand what you're talking about. The data shows otherwise, but I just can't do it.
It'll just take time to soak in.
I guess, brother. I guess I'll keep watching your shows and keep being scared of Dogman, though.
I'm gonna have to
All
start
right, well.
listening to him for bedtime stories. He's got a relaxing voice.
I won't
thank
sleep
you.
tonight. I won't sleep tonight till about 3 in the morning.
I think I'm gonna fly my drone up there to Spencer's house and wait till he's getting in bed, and I'm gonna rig up some kind of a deal. I can go up there and scratch on the side of his house with the.
In my head,
I'll
just
have the
pretend-
camera running so I can see what he does.
Spencer will have to sleep on the couch.
You'll see him run out here. He'll have his little baby deer, one under each arm. Ain't gonna let him get his little babies. Leaving the kids and Jamie in the house.
I protect the baby deer. Anyway, hey y'all, sincerely, thank you very much for doing the show. Extremely educational. Vic, a lot of what you weighed in, man, I'd never thought about some of that stuff or heard a lot of that stuff before. Oh, please, Diane. Like, nobody knows who Vic's channel is or what
Some
Vic's
people
channel is.
may not.
Yeah. Fine. We will put a link.
Suck it, Diane.
We will put a link to Dogman Encounters down below. Anyway, hey, Larry, thanks for jumping on tonight. I appreciate you being here.
Hey, no problem. I learned a lot.
Is it going to make you feel any different next time you go to LBL?
No, I'm working in Memphis tomorrow.
I'd be more worried about that.
I'm not scared. Not yet.
For the record, Larry always does wear red in the woods. He does. He's trying to antagonize them.
I try to tell you all the time.
Chrissy, that's a good idea you got there.
What's that?
Putting 2 red LEDs on my drone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna steal Spencer's new thermal and put that on my drone.
Don't come to me. Go to Pat Rance. He's got at least 2 of them.
Yeah.
He can afford to give one up.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
hey, speaking of which, has anybody ever caught any thermal footage possibly of a Dogman? I mean, I've seen thermal footage of possibly boogers, but has anybody caught any thermal of a Dogman?
Do you know, Vic?
Not that I know of, no.
Yeah.
Might have happened, but yeah, I don't know of that happening.
Well, again, so many people are so reluctant to share anything, because of just the community and the naysayers and everything. I mean, somebody probably has some out there. If you do, please email me. I'd love to see it. Hellbent Holler's channel has a capture.
I didn't get the show together, so but I appreciate you giving me credit anyways.
It was my idea. Everybody.
It was my idea actually because I talked him into it, but he got the
What?
guess.
What? It was not. Liar. Lie. Part 2. Damn it. Well, maybe we might do a part 2 on Dogman. I'm sure the subject will come up again. The subject comes up so much in regular Bigfoot discussion. We had to do this show.
See,
I'm sure it'll come up again. I tell you what, the one thing I'll say about this, the last thing I want to think of is Dogman and Bigfoot running together. One of them is bad enough. The 2 of them working in cahoots together, that is not something I want to think of.
Yeah.
Anyway, wow, we had a lot of people on here tonight and everything. To everybody in the chat, thank you very much. Seriously, there's the email. If anybody wants to email me and let me know something, or if you want Misty's private phone number or whatever, I'll give it to you. You can call and harass her. Oh yeah, I would give that out in a heartbeat.
Or our OnlyFans page.
she shut that down whenever
Oh,
she started
she shut it
YouTube.
down?
She shut that down. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Like
can
I
still
done said in the comments now. You know, I have my standards.
Anyway, Kumbo, thank you very much. As always, Vic,
Certainly.
thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Everybody in the chat, thank you. Hope everybody that seen it enjoyed it, because I don't plan on doing another Dogman show for a little while.
Yeah, we will.
At least 2 weeks.
It's going to be more than that. I've already got other guests lined up, and we're not going to be talking about Dogman or white barbecue sauce or any weird stuff like that.
Planet Serpo.
Planet Serpo. Everybody needs to go look at that. You're like Kane. You're like Kane trying to tell everybody about the giant mushroom thing that's in the upper atmosphere that everybody needs to look
That's
at.
real. That's
Okay.
real.
Okay. I'm sure so is the Planet Serpo show.
I don't know about that.
Y'all hold on backstage for just a minute. Everybody else, thank you very much. Peace out. See you next week. Bye.
Good night.
Night.
I'm a criminal, sent to swipe and steal.